The voice of the people has been heard, and at long last we have a solution. In short terms, the ban on traditional religious practices shall be lifted for all under my praetorship. This risk I take for you and for the Lord. Indeed, my family and my Senate will likely seek to punish me for going against their wishes, but despite everything that has happened, I am in agreement with the many voices I hear across the land. Voices saying that the same family and Senate go against our wishes twice as often. So let us think nothing ill of such disobedience, for it is meagre in comparison to that which is invited. I have arranged with our allies of the true empire that should any harm befall any of us as a result of this proclamation, that they will act in support of both we and the church, as the situation requires. We share borders, languages, coin and families, and while I am foreign to you and even more so to them, I want us to feel that our shared past, indeed our shared present, is enough to soothe any petty differences. From now, my administration will craft laws that encourage and allow exactly this. So hear this, for starters. All citizens currently facing prosecution will be pardoned, and all citizens known to be imprisoned or enslaved for religious crimes will be freed and compensated by the ministers of their local church. Should these orders fail to be carried out, you may petition my staff to intervene. The rest of my plans will be announced in the coming weeks, so be close to your sources of news, and be wary of enemies of the Roman people who may seek to prevent us from healing. Finally, all shall live as they want, as they must, and finally we shall have internal peace to match the external. But there is something I ask of you in return for all this. Let men be men, and gods be gods. Live by these words, and so shall I. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fields of Mars. Last time, the invasion threat from Sicily and southern Italy just basically faded away when the Garamantians asked for peace with us, so that was nice, but we gained a new enemy in the Huns, the far more powerful faction now attacking from Eastern Europe. Constantinopolis and Thracia came under more attack, but Constant basically sold his daughter to the Asian Romans in order to help us stop them, and things went okay. But the Huns started to press their attack, trapping Aurelianus. He waited for reinforcements from Constans, but they didn't come because he went back to Constantinopolis to protect his son and his city against more eastern attacks. Luckily, Tullus was able to distract the Huns when he got close to them, and the Huns decided to target him instead, giving Aurelianus a chance to beat one of the Hun armies in what turned out to be a quite conventional battle. We got most of that Hun army in that battle, so away they go now, thoroughly damaged. They won't be back for a while, but that of course isn't anywhere near to the end of the threats. There's a rebel army, a full stack nearby, and of course the rest of the Hun stacks, which might go and attack Tullus. They might come back and attack Aurelianus. They have the option to do either, given their movement points. And at Serium, the settlement here actually is diseased right now, smallpox I think it was, so this gives a chance of the disease spreading to the troops, which will start killing them and reducing their morale, which is of course not going to help us at all. Now, given the direness of the situation, I decided to actually pull Aurelianus back from the front line. This puts him in a position where he can't be trapped inside the settlement by all three of the Hun armies at once, and of course he'll avoid the chance of disease. So this may mean the Huns can just take the settlement without much challenge, which is probably for the best if it means saving Aurelianus. Tullus is going to stand his ground though and attempt to defend if the Huns attack. Now over in Britannia, Julianus is going to move out towards Europe. His plan of having the Senate basically be destroyed by moving into the wars of southern Europe has completely failed, especially now that the Garamantians have sought peace with us. So he himself is going to have to go down in attempts to reclaim his influence over our administration. so he'll be travelling over the next few turns, and we'll just have to see what the Huns do mainly in the meantime. Their first action is nothing at all. Attila seems to go south into Illyria, and the rest of their armies disappear into the fog of war. Then the Western Roman Empire comes to us, offering a military alliance. This is a very tempting offer indeed, not because I think they'll actually attack us, but it's nice to have all of our very risky internal borders secured up with this, and more importantly, they're willing to pay for the privilege, and we do certainly need the money right now. So we're going to accept that deal, now formalizing the union between the Britannian Romans and the former Italian Romans. Now that big rebel army does come to attack Serium. Now normally this is the sort of battle I might just cut out entirely because it's a balanced engagement, and with the settlement defences we'll probably win, but there are a few little highlights that I did want to show from this battle just quickly. You can also see our garrison is going to be fighting with smallpox affecting them, which apparently doesn't have all that much of a large effect, so I guess they're just affected by smallpox being in the town rather than actually having it. So the enemy advanced, and you can see our citizens fleeing to get out of the way. Surprised they didn't do it before now. The enemy have lots of siege weapons, and this was a case where the AI did things right, using all of their siege weapons to their advantage. So I just abandoned the outer walls before everything was destroyed, this onager going down pretty soon, and we saw their scorpion bolts just bouncing off everything. This crew very lucky to escape with their lives after the destruction of the onager, but that luck doesn't last long. They form a single file line here, and the scorpions somehow know where they are. 3 of them are cut down in one shot. Quite incredible, and the last member seems to come and blend in with this crowd of civilians fleeing from the city. The question now is, will these Roman rebels be against firing into crowds of civilians? The answer to that question is no. They just unleash scorpion bolts, killing 1 woman and the actual guy they were targeting. That finishes off the onager unit. The rest of the civilians will escape. So very ruthless but effective tactics from the enemy. Once they sent all of their forces in there, we got some revenge by sending some cav to go and dispatch all of their siege pieces and crews, although they had already done the damage at that point. So the actual battle itself, nothing too unfamiliar. They just came in and fought us at choke points and struggled, especially because they had their classic tendency to send the cavalry against our spears. One unit that was successful from the enemy's forces is this unit of Protectis Domestici, which was cutting down our lower quality troops. I was trying to kill them with archers shooting over this wall, but it wasn't really doing anything. But that one success wouldn't be enough to win the battle for them. We managed to outflank them completely with reserve infantry. Here, this one unit of levies was all that stood between us and getting behind the rest of the enemy's infantry, and a huge wave of darts there really cuts them down to size, thinning them out so that the infantry can go in and make it nice and easy to win in that melee. Good work from the Legio there, and those levies, those javelinaires, ended up being the last unit to be fighting, and once again they were going to face the wrath of the Legio's dart attack, cutting down basically the rest of them with another charge. Clearly, they didn't learn the lesson from the first time to not stand their ground or go anywhere near much more heavily armed troops, but they are going to basically fight to the very end for no given reason. This rebellion is over, and the outside of the town now resecured. A heroic victory for the garrison forces. A good start and a good bit of exercise, potentially, for if the Huns come and do the same thing.
He promised that he would return with more warriors. If we had let that rogue army take control, you can be sure that he would not have done so. And we saw the strength that the rebels offered. Not enough to stop the Huns. But still, his return is not an absolute certainty. We must not regret what we have done, for it was the right thing in the moment. And if General Aurelianus can be trusted, then we shall be lauded as heroes. But if he does not return, if he acts as our grandfathers said the nobles did in their time, then we will not prevent any man with any intent to enter our city, so long as he bears weapons, for we will need all the help we can muster, at any price, to stop the end from coming, if we last that long at all.
With that all sorted, Constans is just heading to finish off some forces from Macron, I think it was. You might remember this army attacked in the previous episode at Tremontium, and we almost defeated them, so there's some closure on that. Constans ended up finishing them off before returning to his current role of guarding Constantinopolis. Now nothing else really happened, so we're just going to watch and see what the Huns do. Attila appearing to come and attack us from an alternative angle, while the rest of his forces continue to come down from the north towards Sirmium. Aaron defeats an invasion by Asia there, so it looks like our ally is having a hard time. And then this happens. I don't really know how this happened exactly, but Serium comes under attack again from a full stack of Roman rebels, even though this happened last turn. So I don't know if these are rebels from another territory that's just kind of come over, or somehow public order was sufficient to make this just spawn. I don't really know what happened, but I realized here that there's a potential opportunity in a way, because the Huns look like they're about to attack the city, as we can tell from those stacks just to the north of it. So I realized one thing I could try is let the rebels take the city, because they may create a new faction, a faction with which the Huns don't have military access, so they'll actually turn back, and that will force the Huns into more narrow approaches into our territory. So eventually deciding it was worth trying to do this, I picked a protective stance on the auto-resolve in order to hopefully guarantee a loss, because the enemy had a big ranged advantage. It seemed to do the job. It got the decisive defeat, and those rebels will now occupy the settlement. We also learn of refugees, actually providing us with some positive effects there, which is rare. Usually you just get immigration penalties for refugees coming to your land, so this is good news. And Juliana's arriving at Burda Gala now, going to be joining Uther for a short time, but Uther not going to be sticking around. He's going to continue his usual business of fighting the constant attempts by minor Roman rebels to overthrow his faction, which is virtually impossible. Now, there's some rebels sitting in Serium, so they have definitely captured it, but the problem, which I can see here, is that they haven't formed their own faction. That's what I'm trying to look for on the diplomacy screen. They're still just a generic rebel faction, which doesn't get listed here, and that basically means that normal diplomatic rules don't apply to them, and that the Huns still are allowed to walk through their territory, and indeed are allowed to attack them, so they may simply take the settlement for themselves, but at least that will damage the Huns quite substantially in the act of doing so, hopefully anyway, so it still could be worth something to have tried this strategy. It has, for now, stopped them from being able to attack us this turn because of how the settlement's zone of control stops them from moving right into our territory, so it's going to have one turn of the effect we wanted. But the Huns are attacking from other directions anyway, Attila linking up with a force coming from the east to now separate Aurelianus from the rest of our territory, not looking nice at all. We also see Aaron forces on the move. We'll see more of them next turn in order to prepare for what appears to be an invasion coming from various points in the east, especially from Aria here, who are building up right by Constantinopolis. I've had Septimus Gurgis, Constance's son, actually form a new army just outside the city, so we're going to start seeing him take to the field in a bit. First though, let's look at this Hun situation. Luckily, the exact positioning of where they are still allows me to actually walk past them, so we weren't trapped as I had feared. We can move back behind the walls in Serdica, where we'll have an okay chance of defence, but for Vernacium, I think that settlement's called, the one to the north, they are going to be absolutely screwed if the Huns choose to attack them. But there is one opportunity arising from all this Hun activity. Now that we know they're actually quite deep into our own territory, that suggests they're not going to have too much back in their territory, and this provides an opportunity for Tullus to potentially resolve the situation by sneaking in and just destroying all of the infrastructure back at home. So to start off, I'm going to move into this desolate settlement and just keep watch and see if we can find an opportunity to sneak through and do some damage. So let's move on to the next Hun turn, and by Tullus we see stacks moving around. The stack with Attila runs away, and Attila goes off on his own adventure down towards the Danube River there. Then more stacks moving about by Tullus. It seems they just have armies everywhere. There's at least 2.5 by Tullus, and we now know there's 2 or so by Aurelianus, and perhaps some up still near Sirmium. The Aaron forces continue to advance towards us, now destroying the Asian allies to the south and moving into our territory with a full stack, so it looks like an eastern invasion is definitely getting started now. Julianus is able to reach our territory just about, with a forced march through the Western Roman Empire's territory, taking attrition on the way, but able to upgrade once he arrives to a superior troop type, so hopefully he will keep Italy secure, especially now with Tullus going off on a little adventure against the Huns. The problem for this adventure is that we now know he's going to be severely outnumbered, even locally, if he tries to make this attack, so I decided for now to just sneak back into our territory and start a fort in order to get rid of winter attrition, and we'll look more into that later. Now, with regards to Aurelianus and Attila, I realised the fact that Attila has stayed behind while the rest of his army seem to have gone off somewhere presents us with an opportunity, because he's in the movement range of Aurelianus. We can actually challenge him to battle right now and fight him on his own, which might be a rare thing because generally the Hun armies move around in groups and it's hard to pin them down. So this is a chance to kill Attila, which is especially valuable because if you kill him 3 times, I believe, it removes some of the Hun faction's cheats. I think they get something like free upkeep in their first 6 armies or something like that, as long as Attila is alive. So Aurelianus, despite taking winter attrition to get to it, is going to move in to fight this battle. This is a key chance, and the army we're facing is a much more traditional Hun army. Tons of heavy cavalry and high quality horse archers, even a catapult in there for some reason. So we need to find a way to overcome the Huns' big maneuver advantage, but luckily the high discipline Roman forces are probably the best troops for actually doing that. The Hun has grown overconfident, men. With so many horses, just think how easy it would be to flee from battle, and yet he stays. The thought of an easy escape will be on the minds of his men this whole day, as they face men unlike the barbarian rabble on the edge of the world. They face men who fight with furious skill, with righteous passion, with steady hands and broad shields. We have trained to face this foe, and we know how to win. They cannot say the same. Remember your place, remember your duty, and remember that to have anything but contempt for the cowardly Hun arrow is to be scorned by Mars. Earn his respect, his protection, and save the Empire from darkness at the same time. For men like you, it will be quite simple. So the Hun army sets itself up on a nice hill, and those catapults behind are going to be what we're paying attention to begin with, of course, because they're going to far outrange everything. We need to find a way to advance towards the Huns without getting smashed up by the catapults. So to start with, I just set up a nice little noob box on the edge of a hill on the other side of the battlefield, because I'm thinking I might be able to draw the Huns onto me in this fight. So all of our troops are in stationary testudo on the front line, so that's going to make them extremely strong against arrow fire and cavalry charges, which are the 2 big threats in this battle, of course. Got some reserves at the back, and we've got our Cairo ballista sitting in the middle. They should be pretty decent at firing back at the enemy's horse archers. Now, I sent a unit of cavalry forward. The objective here was actually just to get the onagers to fire at them, because we can do the classic trick of just wandering around inside the range of the onagers and microing heavily to try and really mitigate the damage it does to us. But the Huns weren't going to have any of that. You can see they just charged their entire army forwards towards that cavalry unit. So I guess that didn't work, but still we've achieved a more important objective of getting the enemy off their hill, so this is very nice. Our cavalry will rush back to our ranks and will draw the enemy to face us on our hill, and more importantly against our nice stable front line. So as the arrows start flying in, our men's testudos will block most of the damage, but we're also going to face these melee charges, of course, from the enemy's cataphracts. They slam into our lines, but they are basically halted because being in testudo increases one of your mysterious hidden stats, entity mass, the game calls it, which basically in some way stops units from actually breaking through your lines or doing much charge damage to you. So as a result, the enemy just stop, and now they're going to be relatively weak in melee. They're still decent units, but much weaker than they are on the charge, since the cataphracts don't specialise in actually fighting in a straight melee. And it's going to be especially to our advantage on the flanks, where my units were spear cohort, which get a bonus against cavalry. All the time we're fighting, we're going to have arrows raining down on us, of course, and they are going to do pretty decent damage to our men. Our men aren't all that strong, plus you can see the friendly fire getting pretty real. All my archers, who are supposed to be firing back at the enemy's horse archers, because they're on fire at will, they're just shifting target to the cataphracts when they get close and shooting into our own men in the attempts to hit them. Perhaps in a future game they will make fire at will less ruthless, but right now, in Attila especially, it is doing devastating damage to our own side. Now, speaking of Attila, it's Attila coming in to fight with our men in melee. After most of his melee cav was actually defeated, he decided to try it himself, and that failed quite rapidly. But he can't die. Attila is invincible until you've wounded him enough times. So that's 1 wound onto Attila. He will withdraw, and I think the enemy still do get the morale debuff for losing their general. It just means means after the fight, no matter what happens, Attila will just immediately be back in the army. So we'll have to face him again in the future, and we want to try and face him again to kill him as many times as we can to remove all the bonuses the Huns get from Attila being alive. For now, just need to finish off this battle. The balance bar starting to shift into our favour as the enemy's horse archers, starting to run out of ammo in some cases, are charging in for these melees that aren't going to go very well. Our hurlers annihilating our own troops in the attempt to kill those horse archers, of course. Now here's an interesting little thing. I tried to move forwards these Legio to plug one of the looming gaps in the lines. One of my units was about to be destroyed by arrow fire, but they themselves were destroyed by arrow fire because they couldn't form their stationary testudo, because the losses they were taking were coming in so rapidly they actually couldn't stop reforming into their regular lines before forming into stationary testudo. So basically we lost half the unit and didn't do anything with it at all. That was not very good. The power of horse archers should never be underestimated. Now I've got one unit of cavalry behind the enemy. They were just taking out the onagers before they rolled up to start firing on things, and I thought I might be able to use it to force the enemy into my lines by making them skirmish towards me. It didn't work at all. The second I got anywhere near the enemy, all of the horse archers turned round and started annihilating my cavalry, so we just immediately ran away. These horse archers are really powerful, and the only reason we haven't been wiped out in this battle is because stationary testudo is equally powerful, perhaps overpowered in terms of its defense against missile attacks, and makes your unit basically invincible, so we've just been resisting them for the whole battle. And at this point the enemy is starting to run out of troops and ammunition, and whenever they run out of ammo they just send their units in to fight in melee on their own, which of course doesn't really work, especially here where they decide to come around and attack this spear unit in particular, the worst possible choice from the enemy. There is one thing that will work to their advantage, which is when our guys are fighting in melee like this, they don't get their stationary testudo missile defense bonus, I believe. So the fact that they're still under fire means we're going to take a few losses. And of course the horse archers aren't all that bad in melee, being the Huns, so they will be able to kill a few of our troops, but definitely not enough. They're going to take big losses in those melees, and really this is going to demoralize their army to the point where we won't have to finish off the entire thing, because those horse archers out there are going to realize that they can't win. So one more unit over here is rebuffed. It seems to actually give up before routing. They just realized this wasn't going to happen, ran away. It causes a chain rout among the enemy army, so we don't have to kill the last few units just picking us off. And that's the end of that. We have won a very important battle, and the main objective of actually taking down Attila has been achieved. It's going to have to happen a few more times before this actually has any impact, but at least we've saved the local settlements from being attacked as well. After a treacherous journey, we finally reached the warming embrace of Roman soil. There was rejoicing among the people as they saw their consul ride through their streets and fields, and messengers arrived hourly from Rome demanding that I humble the Senate with an audience. But I was not in a position to give in to such vanity, for I knew that I had a greater purpose. The people all spoke with fear on the topic of the Senate's forces under General Tullus. They knew that he was not of the stock required to protect them from the hordes of invaders thronging at our borders to the east. But finally they could be at ease. The standard of my legionaries was pointed into the rising sun, into the belly of the great Hun menace, and a fresh march began. So that's goodbye to Attila, for now at least. His army really beaten up, many of the units getting away there but in bad condition, and a decent number of them being absolutely destroyed. He's probably not going to do all that much in the near future. I'm just mousing over to see where the kills were among their army. I'm actually looking to really try and total their kills, because I wanted to work out how many losses I took to friendly fire. For some reason it doesn't tell you in the newer Total War games how much you lost to friendly fire. But you can see from our army that we have taken decent losses, whatever the source of them was, so we're probably going to need a couple of turns to replenish before we're really able to fight properly again. Now I could theoretically just go and attack Attila again after this turn and perhaps get another chance to kill him while his army is still weak, but this ridiculous retreat screws us over. You can kind of see the logic here. He retreated to a position that was technically a very short distance from where he was just standing, so that's what the game thought it was doing. But actually, in terms of how you get to that point, it's like 5 or 6 turns worth of movement, so I guess there's no actual check to see how hard it is to get to the retreat position. So that's going to be a pretty major exploit against us by the AI. We now can't hunt and kill Attila, which totally sucks because this was such a great opportunity that's unlikely to ever happen again. we'll have to just put that out of our minds and go back to looking here at the invasions coming from the east. We've got Aaron coming up from the south with Asia, not really having the strength to stop them here, and they've even got forces in our own territory. And of course there's Arya over to the right there, just waiting by the looks of things to attack Constantinople again, like they did recently, but just cancelled the attack once Constans came back to threaten them. So what I want to do right now is try and attack this Aaron army. What I'm hoping is that, because it doesn't cost many movement points to go and fight it, we can go and defeat the majority of that southern invasion and then still go back to Constantinople to stop Arya from doing anything. We can even bring over old Septimus Gurgis to take part in this fight for his first battle. Unfortunately, didn't actually happen, and we get another really annoying retreat. This time Aaron retreats through both of our armies and really deep into our territory. So we went out there to repel the enemy and push them out of our territory, and somehow things got muddled up and the enemy ended up much deeper into our territory, and furthermore they're now so far away that we actually can't attack them and still have enough movement to go back to Constantinople and secure our defences against Arya. So overall that went just about as badly as it could have done without a battle actually taking place. Very annoying. So right now we just have to go back onto the defensive and hope they don't do anything too annoying. So Constans going back to Constantinople, and Septimus going to go up to Tremontium, because I thought it's been attacked so many times, it seems like a popular target. He can add himself to the garrison, and with those extra cavalry it should be nice and easy to defend it, even against a full stack attack. Now Tullus, where he was fortifying the border of our Illyrian allies to keep the Huns out of Rome, is now in trouble because 3 Hun armies appeared out of nowhere and suddenly attacked him. The balance bar looking bad. He does have his fortifications though, so first I considered fighting this, but then I realised, looking through what the enemy have on their side, that's a terrible idea. They have loads of those large onagers. It would be very hard to take them out before they start firing in a fort battle. So most likely our stationary blocky force would be absolutely annihilated by the explosive shot, which we saw the power of in the last episode. So thinking about that, I realised that actually fighting in a fort battle would be to our disadvantage. A field battle would be better. I ordered a retreat. Tullus does another weird retreat, which is again going to screw us over. Really bad retreats this episode, because he retreats into a little peninsula where he's trapped. The Huns look like they were going to attack. It even went to slow motion, which is what it usually does just before you have to fight a battle, but somehow we avoided the battle. It didn't happen. They just called off the attack just before they actually got to him. I have no idea what happened, but Tullus appears to have been saved from fighting 4 Hun armies at once there. However, he is now completely trapped on that peninsula. The Aaron army was focused on fighting Asia, so it didn't actually do anything to us in the end turn sequence, so that's nice, but we'll still have to worry about it. More Hun forces have appeared near Aurelianus, another stack, and a general just sitting on his own. So basically I could have gone and fought them right now, but I wanted to replenish more forces, so I wanted to try and spend at least another turn sitting behind some walls, sitting somewhere safe, and I need to actually get out of that region. You can see I didn't replenish that turn because any region where the Huns are present doesn't get replenishment for anyone, so basically we need to try and stay away from them for long enough to get our forces back. We're going to move back to Serdica, destroying this random tiny rebel army that rose up on the way. No problems there. Probably actually making a small profit by using take on warriors and actually getting our forces a tiny bit stronger. So we'll just sit behind the walls, hope the Huns don't come into our region so that we can still replenish, and once our army's a bit stronger we can probably take that other Hun army one-on-one. But now we need to look at Tullus, and the situation is indeed bad. He cannot move past all these armies, and all of the cliffs nearby prevent him from going into the sea, so he can't sail away from here either. Basically, he is in a very dire situation, completely trapped on the peninsula. There are only 2 options here, really. I can fortify and hope that that somehow proves to be in our advantage, but as I discussed, I don't think it would. Or I can ambush. There's a chance that by going into ambush stance, Tullus will become invisible to the AI, because if your ambush is not discovered, then the AI cannot attack it. So I decided to take this chance. It did say something on the tooltip about you being able to actually work out the probability of it working, but I think you can't do that while you're in the enemy zone of control, because it changes the tooltips in some way and the probabilities just don't come up. So that was another little annoying factor to this, but anyway, we've taken the gamble. We're just going to have to cross our fingers and see what happens. the meaning of a victory in the field was indeed diminished when the defeated foe was likely to return once more, even stronger, before the Roman troops had even returned to their posts. Britannian Rome boasted a formidable military legacy, but it was not stopping their enemies from slowly crumbling their borders away. The Huns, already responsible for the destruction of entire peoples and cultures in Eastern Europe, were unable to turn away from the hoarded wealth of the empire. And from the east, an even greater empire with a score to settle had no second thoughts about sending wave after wave of troops from their near-endless reserve of ambitious vassal states. The people of the divided Roman Empire could only watch in terror. Thank you so much for watching. We will of course be dealing with the escalating Hun situation some more, and Constans is going to try and teach his son a thing or two about warfare in the next episode of Fields of Mars.